the planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid, Belinda Waymouth, everyone. Hello, Belinda.
Good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
I am well. I trust the planet is not in the best shape, I guess. I never feel as though we're really getting the upper hand of the planet, but you actually do have some good stories, news stories. That's kind of, the coin of your realm. In addition to covering those things that are in dire circumstance, you also show where we are making changes. So, and actually making improvements and where there is hope. And there is some of that in today's offering. I saw that electricity is, and demand for electricity is off the scale.
Yeah, it's climbing. We had this plateau with electricity demand in the US for a while, and now we're ramping up. And we're ramping up for a few reasons. One of them is that manufacturing is surging again, and ironically, some of that manufacturing is manufacturing to do with renewable energy. Making batteries, storage capabilities, solar panel, and wind turbine manufacturing. So that all takes electricity. But we also have these enormous data centers. I mean, you'll see, in Virginia, they're just popping up everywhere, and data centers require a lot of electricity. They say with AI, we could triple the electricity needs. The other thing that's happening is the planet's getting warmer, and so people who live in hot states in the summer, they're turning on their air conditioning, and maybe they're going to be needing their air conditioning in seasons that aren't, typically our warm seasons. We just had this crazy, the hottest February on record, and this was after 10 months of record-breaking months. So we're dealing with this hotter planet, and so of course electrical needs are going to go up. And the thing is, we're not keeping pace. Last year, it was only in the whole of the US, this enormous country, only 250 miles of cables for transporting the heavy duty electricity were even laid, and it's sort of like the infrastructure aging problem that we're having. We need to upgrade our water municipality infrastructure. That needs to happen, and then of course we need to get going with the electricity, because the wind and the solar, which are the cheapest new generated electricity out there. And I need to point that out every time I talk about it, because these things are so politicized. And so we keep on getting told that, wind and solar, they're too expensive, or they don't make financial sense. They do. They're the cheapest, new generation of electricity. But we have to connect those turbines that are way out, off the eastern seaboard, or off the Pacific, here on this side of the states, into the grid, so that we can get that electricity. And that's going to take a lot of money, and sort of.
But that money has been earmarked already, hasn't it? As these various alternative energy projects have gone up, there's money included in the financing for that, the transfer of that electricity.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, that's part of it. And so, what's happening?
Sounds to me like excuse me for interrupting, but it sounds to me like the infrastructure associated with getting everybody the electricity has well been outpaced by the demand for that electricity right now, so that it's lagging.
Yeah. This is the problem that we're in, and kind of ironically, Texas has this much faster tracked way of getting the renewable energy, into the grid. And there are now, experts saying, look, we need to follow the Texas model, because it's, faster, it's more integrated, it's got a cool name, it's called Connect and Manage. And and they're doing it. So they actually are now getting more electricity from solar than California is. And California, I just have to point this out, and I sort of am a little all over the place, but I just wanted, this is a good snippet. California, for the 7th day in a row, generated more than 100% of their electricity from renewables. In fact, on Thursday, it was over 120%. Now, it wasn't for the whole day. It was for a finite amount of time. But what it shows us is it can happen, and we are on the right track. It's there.
That's extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this, politicization of renewable energy, transition, it's maddening, because the fact is, the writing's on the wall. This is what we need to do, where the temperatures are going up. I sent over one story, and this is just to sort of show what's happening with rising sea levels.
The huge seawall that you sent over, this huge seawall that they built, right? And then what happened?
So it's the coast of Massachusetts, a rich community. They were like, hey, we've got this big erosion problem because of sea level rise and these crazy storms that come in and take away our beach. We can't build sea walls because that's against the law in Massachusetts, and they actually don't work either. You get way more scouring of the sand when you have a solid structure. They brought in 15,000 tons of sand. How long do you think it lasted? The sand dune that they built to protect their property. How long, Mark?
Well, apparently, clearly it's a short time. Otherwise, you wouldn't tell me the story. I would think it would be years, though, normally.
72 hours, and it was swept away. It's so the fact is, and now they've got they've got a
that's
politician.
Embarrassing, expensive. It's everything bad.
It's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. So now they're talking about, we're going to get another $1.5 million of federal funding to protect this coastline. Well, that's 3 of those seawalls. If they come in at $500 million, that's 3 sand dunes you're going to put in and see washed away. I mean, people, we need to be retreating from these super vulnerable coastal areas. So we've got all these states that are saying, okay, we need to keep our big coal-fired power plants open, and we need to build a whole lot more gas, without actually looking at, hey, could we do this with renewables? Because they just see we build a whole lot of gas-fired power plants, and we make a lot of money out of that, right away, and the taxpayer, pays for the cost of construction, blah blah blah. But what happens if we do that? We put more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and exacerbate, the sea level rise in Massachusetts and the losing of their sand dunes, and also the incredible increase in electricity that we're going to need. So the fact that they just see this prediction as, yay, we get to build more gas-fired power plants is crazy, when we know that they're not the solution, and they really need to be looking at renewables, and they need to be exploring those as an alternative way to be producing the electricity, particularly when you see, California can produce all the electricity that it needs. We're, a state of 40 million people. Texas is going, great guns with it, and has worked out how to really fast track getting that renewable
That's remarkable.
energy.
They're an oil state, Texas, of course. So that's really extraordinary. Not to mention they're ruled by conservative leadership.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the problems that we have with wind and solar is there's this really onerous permitting process. It can take years to say, yes, the environmental impact won't be too great. Yes, it will be this. Yes, and there's the solution to this, or one of the proposed solutions, which I really love, comes from a guy called Adam Met. He is out of New York. He's part of a trio of brothers. They have a band, an indie rock band, AJR, their names. So he's Adam. And Adam is also a climate, like wonk. He's really into how do we fix the climate. And so he came up with this brilliant idea. So we have all these drilling for gas and oil that have been permitted to happen on state and federal land. As it's already been permitted, hey, why don't we piggyback some renewables on that? And they're huge land masses. We can put in solar panels, we can put in wind turbines. and he got a bipartisan duo of politicians. So one of them is this guy, John Curtis. He's a Republican out of Utah. The other is Mike Levin. He's a Democrat out of California. And they have approached the Deb Haaland, who heads up she's the Interior Secretary. Yeah. And they've said, hey, how about it? And of course, the initial reaction out of the Bureau of Land Management is like, this has a lot of potential. This is a great idea because we have already set aside this land for generating electricity. Does it have to be, from oil and gas, or the oil and gas that would then get used in power plants? We could just be using this land to straight away generate wind and solar power. And I'm like, right on. I love it. It's it's low hanging fruit.
It's super clever. It really is. So he really. And it's funny, he did, I was just, from what I was reading, he did a lot of research in this space too, you know what I mean, to come up with this innovative idea. It's kind of remarkable that no one else was, and you need maybe somebody who's a little higher profile to push it through with to get a meeting with the Secretary of the Interior and, the Congress people and, decision makers. But it seems to be making real headway.
Yeah, and it's it's a no-brainer. It's like, well, of course, you're going to have all that other land sitting there. You're not going to have oil derricks over the whole thing. And of course, purists would prefer that there was no drilling going on. But if it's going to happen and if it's permitted, and it's so hard to permit standalone solar projects and wind. I mean, we've got communities on the East Coast, and they get very riled up, by misinformation. Not in my backyard. I don't want the wind turbines here. A lot of these offshore, they're 8 miles out to sea. They're not going to be in your ocean.
Yeah, you can't see them from your house.
Yeah. You can't see them from your house. And if you have a house that's right by the beach, we know from the story before about the $500,000 sand dunes. You want less greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. You want those turbines out there. So anyway.
No, so true. So true. Tell me what's happening in New South Wales.
So you'll love this because you like these legal stories. So in 2022, the native, they're called the Native Title Tribunal, allowed the Santos, they're called Santos Narrabri. It's this great big huge gas project, a $3.6 billion natural gas drilling. And the tribunal ruled, you know what? The public's needs absolutely outweigh the environmental impact. Yes, you can do it. And the native people of that area, the indigenous people of that area, and I could be pronouncing this wrong, Gomeroi people, appealed, and they said, hey, these are our traditional lands, and this is pollution and an energy source, an energy source that we don't want, being drilled, here on our sacred land. And what's interesting, Mark, is when the decision was appealed, there were, the go-ahead was appealed. There were 6 different points that were raised, and the only one that the federal judge said had standing and halted this project was because of climate change and environmental concerns. So that's a win. The science is in, and the facts, I mean, we're being, faced with them every day now. We see it. We see climate change. We feel it. And so you're getting, it's not this existential crisis that's sort of somewhere in the future and you're not feeling we're feeling the impacts of it now. And so, of course, you're getting judges and people who just have more knowledge of it because there wasn't enough knowledge of it before. Now there is, and so we're getting more. I
agree. Now judges of the sort that were involved in that decision see this coming down, and they view this as a truly serious existential threat, and their view is, we can rectify this, or we can at least be part of trying to rectify this situation. So they act on behalf. It's really terrific to see judges finally stepping up, maybe, and joining advocacy. I mean, not to break the law, but just simply to offer those legal protections that can be there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
to say that, that climate change is really a threat, and if these are your, sacred lands, why should they have this, polluting, industry on them?
Yeah,
And,
and those people, they have legal protections of their land. Why shouldn't those legal protections be upheld?
Yeah, exactly. And the crazy thing is, we were talking about this, you and I, last week in our segment. We're very, the balance right now is so sort of in favor of fossil fuels and the subsidies, and this stuff is really stopping us from making the transition. And I was my Australian source who I was talking to was telling me, that in Australia, just to give you an idea of how out of whack it is. So Australia is a huge fossil fuel producer, and the revenue that they get from the fossil fuel industry in Australia, the tax revenue per year is $2.28 billion. That's what the fossil fuel industry brings in. For comparison, what students who've been to university, what their debt is garnering with the taxes that they then owe to the government, $4.9 billion. So Australian students are putting more into the kitty than the fossil fuel industry.
Well, and the reason that's instructive is then you're saying that's because of tax breaks for big fossil fuel companies, and that students who are paying taxes on they're paying taxes on loans. Is that what they're doing? I take it, or
well,
how are the students taxed there?
It's the revenue that the government gets from the student loan, from the money that they have.
I see. They tax. I'm sorry. They tax it on one. Yeah, they tax it on down the way. In effect.
The repayment, the interest that they owe. They're making more out of the students than they're making out of the fossil fuel industry. Which
but that's again to the original point. That's because of the tax breaks that the fossil fuel companies get.
Yeah, and it's bonkers. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be saddling your young people with that kind of debt, and then letting an industry that's making record profits to our demise, that are causing the planet to suffer. I mean, it doesn't make sense, and. I've said it so many times, we as human beings, we hate change. We're not good with it. And of course, we hate change even more if it costs us money. And of course, the fossil fuel industry, they're making these record profits. They want to get every cent they can out of the ground, and they don't want these subsidies to go away. So, they spend a lot of money on lobbying and all kinds of things to keep the status quo going. But the handwriting is on the wall. I mean, it's not handwriting at this point. It's huge graffiti, stop, drilling.
It is remarkable, but I think you've made this point repeatedly, and it seems so appropriate that we just really don't like change. And this change, this change has to be made, but the threat is slow moving relative to what we're used to responding to. When the floodwaters are rising quickly, we get it. We're panicked. But when the seawaters are rising quickly in a global sense, but slowly in terms of our perception day to day. Yeah. Although that seawall story is still amazing. I don't care what it cost. They built this whole thing. It only lasted 72 hours. I mean, come on.
3 days. Three
That's
days
crazy.
and it was gone.
Just wild.
They thought it was going to be there for at least a year. And then what local politicians said was, but it still did its job, and it stopped. The damage could have been worse from that storm. And it's like, guys, there are better ways to spend the money. And the fact is you know what's coming, and that there is going to have to be this managed retreat, and we are going to have to make reality our friend with what's happening on the planet. But it's just sort of this digging in of the fingernails and really wanting to to eke every sort of penny they can out of fossil fuels, and also to to not have to change. But it's this is not it's not realistic at this point. I mean, we have to be adapting. We have to. It's not just mitigation. Right. We have to adapt to what's happening.
I mean, we beat our chests about how smart we are, and we're the. But it's bizarre that we have a species like human beings so intelligent, so flexible. One of the reasons we've done so well through the eons is because of our flexibility. Our societies are able to be malleable enough that they're able to adjust to various conditions. And still, this one is going to require a much bigger lift. But it's very cool that today there are a few indications that people are finally getting the memo, and courts around the world are getting the memo as well, that these native lands have to be protected, and that, you know, we need to disincentivize dirty fuel. It just it can't be underwritten the way it was in the last administration. I mean, where, you know, they were banging the drum for coal. It was, it's like as though it's like 1905 all over again, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, idiotic, completely idiotic.
Belinda Waymouth, you can find her on social media at Belinda Waymouth, is Waymouth. You can follow her on Instagram at that same handle. Belinda, thank you so much for spending time with us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Belinda Waymouth, everybody.
Talk to you soon.
More
It's the planet stupid. No, it's the planet stupid.
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.